Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're again still going to be letting people in over the next couple minutes, so feel free to get yourselves comfortable.
Carl, where are you?
Where am I? I'm in Englewood, New Jersey.
Oh, that makes more sense while you're awake.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've been
You don't
here.
think Carl would get up in the middle of the night to talk to me?
I would get up in the middle of the night to talk to you anytime, Howie. You know that.
Yeah, I know. So that's why it was a good question.
You didn't want my smart ass answer, huh? Okay.
How are you, Miriam?
I am okay.
All right. We should
Just
all
a
be
long
okay.
pause that always accompanies that question lately. Have to really think about it these days. Before we get started, I'm going to go over my 30-second Zoom best practices. I find that if you are not speaking, if you could keep yourself on mute, that ends up working best, so we don't get a lot of accidental background noise. So if you could keep yourself muted unless you have a question, we would really appreciate if you did that. Again, thank you all so much for joining tonight. My name is Sarah Pilovin. Looking at the list here, I know that I've spoken to many of you. I'm part of the Israel Ride team. We actually scheduled this event a few weeks ago before some things happened. So we plan on covering a lot of territory tonight, but we basically just wanted to get everyone together and see what questions you had and answer them. I am going to pass things on to Howie first, and then David Eisenberg for some opening remarks.
Thanks, Sarah. Welcome, everyone. We also, I'm happy to say, and I know Sarah is very happy, that she has a new member to the Israel Ride team working for Chazon. Alana, I don't know what's Alana's last name?
We're replacing an Alana with an Ilana, Ilana Eyal, and you will all hopefully meet her very soon.
Yes, so we're happy to have her. Welcome everybody tonight. It's nicer to do this given the news of the last few hours that at least we have a ceasefire. I'm sure that this has been in the forefront of many of your minds over the last 10 days. I know it's been on mine. But as Sarah said, when we put this together, we thought in the forefront of people's minds was going to be, is the Israel Ride really happening, and COVID, and what does that mean? And so the idea tonight was just really to create an open forum and to be able to us to respond a little bit to questions you have about that, let you sort of know where we are. We believe as of this time that we will be able to run a ride that we'll be proud of, and be able to deliver a product that may not be exactly what we've done in the past, but will be at a very high level. We're sort of happy to answer specific questions that people may have. You know, in terms of, we've gotten lots of questions about the last 10 days and what does that mean? We've been doing this for many years. This is not the first time that we've had some things go on in Israel that were uncomfortable. the last thing we would do is bring anybody to a situation that we don't think would be a safe and comfortable situation. You know, in these times, it's 5 months until the ride. 5 months is a long time as the way things develop. You know, in the past, we've changed our route at the last minute based upon input we got from the Israeli army, who we check with all the time as to what we do and how we do it and how it goes. It's the same framework that all the elementary and high school and middle school field trips use to check whether it's safe for the Israeli children to go out to various points in the country. And so that's what we do and will continue to do when the time comes. And as of now, we're optimistic that we're going to be able to run the ride just as we thought we were going to be able to. Before, I think it'd be nice just to go around and have everybody introduce themselves very quickly, since we have a lot of people, but just sort of maybe your name, where you're from. If you're we have a lot of veteran riders on the call. We have a lot of first-time riders. We have some people interested, just to sort of tell us where you fit. And let's go around and do that. And then David, the vice chair, David Eisenberg, will add a few words, and then we'll go to questions. So why don't
I am going
I'm just
to
gonna go.
I'm gonna
Oh, you-
go call
go
on people because I think that's easiest. Sometimes when new people come, my entire screen rearranges. So if at the end I have skipped you, please let me know. It was not intentional. I care about everyone on this call very deeply. First up on my screen, I have Robert Rosenbaum. So the opening prompt we have is name, location, number of rides you've been on, and a question that you have.
Hey, everyone. As I said, I'm Robert. In the Atlanta area, and I've been on the ride 6 times now. So I don't have any questions, but hoping to be there with you all this fall, and along with my wife too.
Thanks, Robert. Next up, I have Ralph.
Hello, everybody. This will be my 8th ride and looking forward to it. And I have no questions for you.
Thanks, Ralph. Next, I have Steve Golden.
Steve Golden, Cedarhurst, New York. I've been on the ride 3 times, 2 times with my wife Shira. We ride a tandem, and we're looking forward to the ride in the fall.
Thanks, Steve. Next up, I have Bill Rosenbaum.
Hi, Bill Rosenbaum from Del Mar, California. This will be my 2nd ride. I rode in 2019 and looking forward to being back in Israel again. I
Great.
don't have any questions at this time.
Great. This is going to be an easy night for us, chairs. Next on my screen, Rachel Calico.
Hey everyone, Rachel Calico. I'm the Director of Development at Friends of the Arava Institute. We're one of the beneficiary organizations. And this will be my 2nd ride, my 2nd time on the ride, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you.
Thanks, Rachel. Next, I have Dave Burson.
Well, this will be my first time for the Israel trip. I did the virtual edition last year. I'm in Elkins Park, just outside Philadelphia.
Great, thanks, Dave. And if I mispronounce anyone's name, please also let me know. Next on my screen, I have Jacqueline.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Guan. I am from the Chicago area. I live in Deerfield, right outside of Chicago. I was signed up for the ride last year, which didn't happen. So hopefully I will be on the ride this fall.
Great, excited to have you with us, Jacqueline. Next, I have Bruce Stanger.
Hi, many old friends. This will be my 14th time on the ride. I hail from West Hartford and Boston these days, a little bit in each every month. And my only question is really hope that we're going to be able to ride down from Par Harif to Shabbat this year as we've done in many of the other years.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Next on my screen, I have Miriam May.
Hello, I'm Miriam May. I'm the CEO of the Friends of the Arava Institute. This will be the fourth ride I come to, fifth ride I would be coming to if we count last year. And I look forward to getting to know all of you and being together safely and wisely in Israel.
Thanks, Miriam. Next, I have Adam Peck.
Hi, Adam. I'm from Massachusetts. I was on the 2014 ride, and I'm looking forward to riding again. I just have one quick question, a personal question. So I try to drink enough prior to the ride. And I'm just wondering if any of you other riders have issues with cramps while you ride and what you do with it. So sometimes when I'm riding, I'll listen to have like stabbing pains in my side, and it becomes very difficult to ride. So I'm trying to ride now without having eaten for maybe an hour and a half before the ride. Do any of you have that? I Googled it. I don't really see much about it. Any thoughts?
Thank you, Adam. And I highly encourage everyone here, if you are not already, to join our Israel Ride Facebook group, where people ask similar questions and receive very, very helpful answers. Next on my screen, I have Carl.
Okay. Carl Jacobs, I made Aliyah 10 years ago. And I'm in Englewood because my son and daughter-in-law had a baby about 5 weeks ago. So we came for a month, and because of the Matzav currently hopefully ending, I've had my return flight canceled twice in the last 10 days. We think we're getting out Sunday. I think I'm fairly certain I've done the ride 9 times. I missed it 1 year because of a family funeral. And since then, I have very happily been basically the elder member of the ride staff and Miriam May's dedicated driver and general factotum. So I won't see you on the road, but I will see you on the road. And I look forward to having you all come home in October.
Thank you, Carl, and Mazal Tov to you.
Thank you.
Next on my screen, I have Barry Schlossberg. You able to unmute, Barry? There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm Barry Schlossberg. I live in Newton, Mass. I've been riding for years, but only the last two very seriously. I was registered for last year. My wife is Israeli from Rishon LeZion. I've been to Israel more than 20 times, so I know Israel very well, but not from the perspective of the ride. And I had knee replacement surgery in December, but I've been riding a lot since March, so I should be ready by October. And I'm looking forward to it. I don't really have any specific questions right now, but I'm going to be renting a bike there, but bringing all my paraphernalia, helmet, seat, pedals, all that stuff. Plan to arrive in Yerushalayim Monday morning, which I hope is enough time.
Great. Thanks, Barry. We're looking forward to it.
Okay.
Next up, I have Natalie Cohen. All right, there we go.
Hi, I'm Natalie. This is my husband, Daniel. We've never done the ride. We were convinced by two veterans that we should explore this. It's something we were thinking about and didn't realize it existed, but there are two, we're from Columbus, Ohio, and there are two individuals from Columbus that do it every year, and they highly recommend that we look into it.
I grew up riding a bicycle like a hooligan in Brookline, but we are out of training, so we would need some training help. And I've also led several trips to Israel myself through P2G through my professional life. And I would very much look forward to being a participant rather than a leader. That would be so awesome.
I totally get that.
Thank you both so much for joining us, and riding in Brookline, you will know 3/4 of the Israel ride. So fantastic. Next up on my screen, I have Joe.
I'm Joe Epstein. This will be my wife and my 5th ride. My wife Deborah and I think our first one was in 2012. We live in Evanston, Illinois. And look forward to seeing you guys in Israel this fall.
Thanks, Joe. Next on my screen, I have Neil Epstein.
Unmute. Neil Epstein, just to make it challenging.
Epstein.
I've got
Oof.
1 P and I'm Epstein, and Joe has got 2 P's and he's Epstein. So there the twain shall meet. Neil Epstein, living in New York City. This will be my 3rd actual after 1 virtual ride. And I've been in Israel many times over the years, starting when I was college age, and have many good friends there. So I do like to take trips every year or so, and the Israel ride has just become another way of connecting. In terms of questions, I'm curious, given the environment, given COVID, given the sort of slow start there, given the war, how people are experiencing their fundraising efforts. I'm getting a little bit of a hollow reply when I talk about Israel and fundraising right now.
Great question. Thanks, Neil. And I specifically pronounced Neil's last name incorrectly on purpose to show how it is okay to correct me. So thank you, Neil. We didn't even plan that out beforehand. Next up, I have Matthew Liebman or Liebman.
You got it right the first time.
Nice.
Thanks. I've ridden once in 2015. Looking forward to doing it again this year. I'm from outside Boston in Acton, and I've been riding with some other friends. George Morton is probably somebody that many of you know. He's done it at least 6 or 7 times. So the major question that I probably would have is, what would it take to cancel the ride, COVID and war?
Great question. Thank you for joining us tonight. And next up, I feel very confident about this pronunciation. Marcus Schaftel. Oh no, now Schaftel? I was so confident and then I messed it up.
Does work fine. I'm Marcus Schaftel. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm part of Team Austin Achim. This will be my 4th Israel ride because I do count the virtual ride. I put down 300 miles and had a saddle source to prove it. So it totally counts. I do have 2 questions. I'll ask them both and then they can answer. David Eisenberg, are you feeling as good as you're looking? Because it's nice to see you. And Howie, can you show me your feet and how are they working?
We will be doing foot
Man,
displays
who
later.
knows too much.
For those of you who do not know, Howie had a foot injury. Hopefully that context makes it less weird. But he plans on being more than great for the ride. Also, Marcus is very modest, but I need to compliment him. Team Austin Achim is one of our top fundraising teams at the moment. Also the team with the most members. So public shout out to Marcus, and hopefully that will help spur some friendly fundraising competition.
That would be awesome.
Next on my screen, we have a very newly registered rider. And I apologize because I'm definitely going to mispronounce your name. Jacques Marin?
Perfect. Yes, Jacques Marin. I'm a French citizen. I live in the United States, in the Washington, D.C. area, and this will be my first ride. I'm very impressed with the level of experience of most riders. I'm concerned that maybe I cannot make it. I am an occasional biker, maybe 1 hour at a time. So here we are. I'm not sure the level of challenge I'm going to face, but I'm excited and I want to do it.
We are very excited to have you, and we have groups for every rider. We will talk more about that later. Thank you for joining us. Next up, I have Jennifer Markowitz.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Markowitz. I'm coming to you from New York City. I'm inspired by the repeat business or the repeat visits everybody makes to this Israel ride into Israel. This is my first time on Israel ride. I've been to Israel many times. I lived there for a year after college, and my husband behind me, Alon, is from Israel. Very excited for the ride. I've started training and a little bit anxious. I think I want to try the Nitzana, assuming it goes forward. And that's a huge challenge for me. It would be, I guess, almost a century. And a little would love information about elevations there and sort of just the challenges of that specific ride, and I guess the day after too.
Thank you, Jennifer. And also, it's very nice to see and meet you alone. I've spoken to Jennifer a bunch of times over the last few weeks, and you've just been a name on a screen. So it's nice to put a face to the name. Next on my screen, I have Stuart. You able to unmute, Stuart? There we go.
There we go. Hi, Stuart Bogum. I'm in Philadelphia. I've done the ride 3 times. This will be my 4th. And looking forward to the ride, of course. I do have a question to throw out there. I'm sure you folks have been thinking about this, but since we are riding through the South, and the South was the most impacted by the hostilities, is there any way, have you given any thought to ways that we could engage with the communities that we travel through before the ride, after the ride, during the ride, to be supportive in some way or acknowledge, connect with them over what they've been through? So just a thought.
That is a fantastic question. Thank you so much, Stuart. And just so you know, I'm writing down everyone's questions. We are going to get back to them. Don't you worry. Next on my screen, I have Jean.
Hey, so I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. This will be my first ride. I registered for last year and it didn't happen. I've been to Israel 7 times in the last 3 years, and I'm slated to go back in June, but we'll see. If not June, July. In the middle of making Aliyah, or at least registering for it. And my question, Sarah knows this, is I was training and then my husband got cancer. So the last 6 months I have not been training and just starting back this week. Similar to Jacques' question, if you show up and you're just not physically ready, what happens?
That is a great question. Thank you for joining us, Jean. And my short answer to you is we have a place for you. And in that same vein, I know that I've spoken to a bunch of you over the last few weeks who've scheduled one-on-one calls. And I said that I would get back to you with answers to some of your questions. I had a 2-hour meeting yesterday with a colleague going over the answers to all of these questions. So if you've not yet heard from me, answers are coming shortly.
I think, Sarah, I just wanted to say is when I signed up for the ride, I found out that my daughter's boyfriend's uncle actually helped found Arava Institute.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I put out the fundraising message, his mom read, "Oh, my brother helped fundraise that." Then I have established Arava Institute.
Who's that?
I have to get the name. I will get the name and send
Is
it
it
to you.
Alon Tal?
You know, it's like they've been
He
dating.
also has an American name from before he made Aliyah.
Right.
Well, he made it a long time ago. It was like the 70s.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's founded the kibbutz. Okay. We'll talk offline.
We'll talk. So anyway, that was news.
That was fantastic. And felt like the most Jewish story ever. My daughter's boyfriend's uncle's dog's previous owner. Great, thanks, Jean. Next up on my screen, I have Dan Goodman.
Hi, this will be my third ride. I don't have too many questions. I hope to at least do as well as I did 4 years ago, which was barely keeping up with the highest group on 2 of the days, but not 3 of the days. Just one quick question on the last day. Is there an option to at the if you go on the I forget the name of it, where King Solomon mined the copper, is there an option to go not on a bus tour but on a rent the bikes in the morning, the trail bikes that they have there?
Great, thank you, Dan. Next up, I have Lori Silverman.
Hi, I'm Lori Silverman. I'm from West Hartford, Connecticut, and this is my third actual ride, fourth if you include the virtual last year, which I wasn't slated to go, but was excited to virtually go and have fun with that, and it was great. I have a 21-year-old who is on his way back from Hong Kong from a semester right now. And so if he can make a semester in Hong Kong happen, I'm hoping that I can make another Israel ride happen, despite everything else that seems to want to stack up against us, because I went in 2014 and I feel like it's Groundhog's Day with what's happening with Hamas, and are we going to get to ride to Ashkelon? But I don't have any specific questions. I'm just looking forward to being back there again. And I've been in touch with relatives and friends throughout the conflict most recently, and it feels comforting to know people on the ground there. And to know that just like as a teenager, the conflict's not happening on every corner. And so I do believe in the potential for us to go and ride. And unfortunately, the conflict is not the same as a pandemic that's around the whole globe. And I hope that we are able to be there.
Great, thanks, Lori. I have last on my screen a phone number that does not have a name attached to it. If you are a 209 phone number, can you introduce yourself?
This might be me. My name is Steve Schermerhorn. I did the 2019 ride and I'm in California, and no questions.
Great, thanks for joining us, Steve. I am Sarah Pilavin. I am calling from Brooklyn, New York. I work at Chazon, one of the Israel Ride beneficiaries. I'm the Associate Director of Special Events. I do not have any questions currently. This is going to be my, last year was my first virtual ride, and this year is going to be my first physical in-person ride, and I'm very, very thrilled. I am going to turn things over to David Eisenberg. I see, Bill, you are very kindly raising your hand. I'm going to pass things over to David quickly, and then if people have questions, I invite them to either raise their hand in the reactions settings below, or you can feel free to put your question in the chat, and I will make sure that they get answered. So first, David Eisenberg, and then Bill, we will get to you.
Thank you.
Great. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm David Eisenberg. I've been involved with the ride. Well, I first heard of the ride in 2003. I've been on the ride, I think, all but 1 year since 2005. So it's become kind of an annual commitment. Got more involved in the leadership of the ride in 2012 when I became vice chair of the ride, and my primary responsibility in that capacity is a year-round one, working with the team that you all involved in recruiting people and overall marketing of the ride. And also, actually, since the first year I've done the ride, I've always been on Team JNF. I would respond to one thing that came up because it wasn't a question, so it might not be on the list, but But Daniel, I think you said something about how much you were looking forward to being a participant, not a leader. This is actually a fantastic group to be part of the leadership of as well. So, but that said, I have had moments where I wished I could just go back to being a writer, but we won't go into that. But it's great to be here. Just to follow up on Marcus's comment, Howie and I must be kindred spirits in more than one way, because I had surgery on April 2nd, that meant that I wouldn't be able to be on a bike for a few months. And Howie very thoughtfully injured his Achilles tendon on the same day. So we both have a date for July 2nd to be back on a bicycle. I know I will be very excited to be back on a bike. And in that context, my plan for this year's ride is I think one person said their hope is to do it at least what they did a couple of years ago. That's actually exactly what I'm working towards. Hopefully it'll come to pass. But look forward to this discussion. I know Sarah's kept an inventory of questions, and we'd love to go through them and hear any other questions that come up as we do go through them.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think let's try and deal with sort of one area of questions at a time. I think the first is just the whole question of can we do the ride and the security situation. You know, the answer to that is that nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. 5 months from now is a long time away. As things develop, we keep a pulse on what's going on. We talk to the people who are involved in the tourist industry in Israel. We speak with the Army, and we make an assessment based upon what they tell us as to what's safe and what's not safe, and what we can and can't do. And you know, we are very optimistic that we will still be able to do the ride. There is no certainty in this world. And so, you know, as I said before, every day we clear our route with the Army. And also, you know, before the ride, as we get closer to the time, the whole route gets cleared in advance with the Army. You know, based on that, back in, I guess it was 2014, we significantly changed a couple of days worth of the route.
And on
to get away from
2016 also, or 17.
Yeah, to get away from Ashkelon. You know, it's really too early to know what's going to be done, but we will talk to all the people in Israel that know the most and take care of this thing and communicate back any concerns or issues that we hear. In that same token, I don't know who said it, but I thought it would be a fantastic idea, assuming we do get to ride through the Ashkelon corridor, to be able to meet some of the people there in some form or fashion. We've done that. Our Chaverim group, which is the non-riding group of friends and companions, has done some of that over the years on that day. In some years, our Shomrim group, which rides in the morning and generally does some sort of tour or something in the afternoon, has done some of that in the past. We've done a lot of that in the town of Sderot, which used to be the main front line. Now the main front line has expanded. So I think that's a wonderful idea, and we'll see what we can put together. Any other sort of questions about that side of things?
We've had speakers from Farmers Moshav in the Gaza envelope come and meet us just at rest stops and speak to everyone and join us in the evening. So that's another way we connect to that, through some of our partners at the Jewish National Fund and just local farmers who plow the land there.
Yep. The sort of the second group of questions, you know, I think is and those were the majority of the questions we were getting as of 2 weeks or so ago, were COVID related questions. You know, I think in general, given the direction that things are going, we're optimistic that we will be able to run the ride. I'm sorry, I see a couple of hands now. Were those hands about the other subject? Bill or Matthew, was either of that about what we were talking about before?
Yeah,
Then I missed it?
yeah. I was just wondering if you had certain criteria that you would use to evaluate whether or not you can hold the ride, or I guess maybe modify it if necessary, on both the COVID and the conflict. What kind of measures would you look at that we could track too?
So the key criteria really is we go through a process with the police and the military to get our route approved. It's a similar process that all kinds of tours, not classic tourist bus tours, but we're more like hikes and other outdoor things that are done by a lot of school groups. And so a lot of it is we take our input from them as to what they think is safe and appropriate and okay to do. It's a combination of that and what all the people we know on the ground in Israel are seeing and feeling. And what we see and feel and how people feel comfortable here. But you know, we've had situations before. You know, I can tell you that our first ride was in 2003, in May of 2003. We were all excited to put this together. We were a little over 30 people that were ready to do it. And then all of a sudden, this thing called the Gulf War broke out in March. And we didn't know how long it was going to be and how long it was going to take and what was going to be. And at the time, there were some missiles that were fired from Iraq towards Israel. And we looked very carefully at the situation and we sort of paused for a minute. And of course, for those of you who remember, the quote unquote war ended in a few short days, or at least that's what we thought at that time. We ended up getting comfortable and being able to go then. So it's really, there's not a hard and fast criteria. It's consulting with all the people around us and seeing what sort of feels right. Yeah, Bill.
Bill has been very patient. Thanks, Bill.
Just staying with the COVID issue one more time. Is Israel going to accept our COVID vaccination certificates, number one? Because I've heard that that they're very strict about the documentation of our COVID vaccinations. And number two, you don't have to address it now, but I forgot to ask, is anybody going to be attending the JNF convention gala on the 14th that's happening at the hotel? That's it. That was my question that I forgot to ask earlier.
So first, in terms of the JNF, we're trying to. Aren't we trying to put something together?
We do have
the
Israel.
JFN. The JNF is a week is a few days before. The JNFN overlaps.
I'm talking about the gala on the 14th at the hotel.
Yeah, Miriam, we're in conversation right now. We do have a bunch of Israel riders who are going to the JNF conference a week beforehand.
I'll be at the JNF conference as well.
Yeah.
I'll maybe at both those conferences.
So we're in conversation about if/how we can have an Israel ride presence.
Great.
You know, in terms of what the Israel is going to require of us, it's very much a moving target. there's some new, 2 weeks ago, there was one set of rules and regulations. I've heard that there's a new set of rules and regulations coming, and I'm sure there will be additional changes as we go forward. I think our working assumption is that vaccines in America would be recognized or accepted or call it whatever you want to call it. I think there's a good probability that we would look to require all of our riders and staff to have been vaccinated, unless they had a real medical reason why they couldn't be. And exactly what the rules will be as to how you have to do what is going to change between now and October. But if things continue to move from a COVID perspective in the direction that they've been moving, it will get easier, not more difficult to deal with all of those things. And we certainly don't have the crystal ball to know that, to know what it's going to be. We're optimistic that things are going to continue to move in a good direction in general from that perspective.
I also want to welcome Mark and Susan. If either of you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. Mark, I know, is joining us straight from, or apparently still on a Zwift ride. So thank you for joining us, Mark.
The ride just ended. I'm cooling down. It was quite a race.
Yes, go ahead, Howie.
In terms of COVID, I know we've had a lot of people ask us. We have a general policy we have had that says if you have a roommate that you want to be your roommate, you can be roommates certainly together for the week. But if you don't have somebody who you want to be your roommate, we had a policy of switching roommates regularly, just so more people could meet more people. People have asked, are we still going to do that? The answer is maybe, maybe not. We're not going to force anybody to switch roommates if they don't. We're again going to look at what is the norms that are happening much closer to the time, and see what makes sense. The same, people have asked about the briefings, and a lot of our briefings are in halls that none of us would have wanted to be in 2 months ago or 3 months ago, with a person on each side, in front, behind, and the like. Are we still going to do that? Are we going to do it in a different way? And again, I think we'll need to see what the situation is at the time, what's accepted at the time. Take a lot of guidance from what both here in America, the CDC is telling us is okay to do, and telling people is okay to do, as well as some of what's going on in Israel. And sort of if it doesn't make sense to have everybody in a room to do a briefing, we'll come up with an alternative way to do it. Another question that's often been asked is most of our meals are buffet meals in terms of what happens at the hotels. Are we still going to do that? And again, that's a situation that 2 or 3 months ago, certainly would have been a significant problem. And we'll see what the situation is 4 months from now. And based upon, again, what's being generally accepted in the community and the recommendations are, we'll find a way to follow them. So, I think we've all learned that there are people and people that we all know that are all along the spectrum of what risks they were willing to take, or how careful or not careful they are. I think we will be at a reasonable place on that spectrum. Certainly not all the way to one end, and probably not all the way to the other end either, in terms of there may be people who think that what we're doing is not to their 100% to their liking, and we're just going to do the best to find the best place that we can. And again, if the situation changes, we'll not hesitate to make significant changes as to what we have to do. And if we can't deliver a ride that we think is going to be outstanding, then we won't. And we'll come back to you and tell you that we can't. But given everything that's happening now, we think we're going to be able to do that. Yeah, Jacques. You're on mute.
Thank you. Can someone expand on a typical day on the road? How many hours on average? The level of difficulties, how many stops, and so on. I mean, most of you have a lot of experience, so you know already, but I like to learn a little more.
I'm happy to expand
Sure.
on that. First off, Jacques, the fact that it's May and you're worried about it means you will be fine on the ride. Because the issue that usually worries us is when someone's asking these questions in September. And by
Well-
September, if they're not
Well-
ready for some serious riding, it's going to be a challenge.
If I can
But-
interject, I never biked more than 1 hour in my life.
Okay, good. So that gives me a reference point. I'd ask you a key question, and then I'll answer your question. After your 1 hour bike ride, could you do another one after you take a 20-minute break?
Well, typically I bike fast and I exhaust myself, and after 1 hour I'm done.
Got it. So we'll talk some about pacing yourself.
Right.
So there's 3 riding groups on the ride. And in round numbers, think of the 3 groups as one of them combines riding and other touring. And the riding for them in a typical day is about 30 to 35 miles. And they have 1 rest stop. So to Mike, could you bike for an hour and then another hour? It's they bike 15 to 18 miles. They take a break, they cool down, then they do that again. And then they're done for the day. That's their typical day. The middle group, which is usually the largest group, they'll average between 50 and maybe 65 miles a day. 65 will be one of their longer days.
In time, in hours?
The hours,
I mean, approximation.
yeah, it's, your actual riding time on the bike is in that first group I mentioned, the average speed is probably about, it's a slower group, but the average moving speed I would bet is sort of 10 to 12 miles an hour. So, the catch we always have with that group is the time it takes them to get to the next rest stop is actually longer than for the other groups, because the rest stops are, like I said, typically 15 to 18 miles between them. The middle group, basically think of it as 2 more rest stops. So they're going to ride, like I said, 50 to 65 miles a day. They'll usually, most days, not every day, but most days, their route and that earlier group actually overlap first thing in the morning. It's just when the other group takes a break and is done for the day, this group takes a day break and goes back for 2 or maybe 3 additional segments. And then the third group is averaging more like 65 to 70 miles a day. So over the course of the ride, they ride about 350 miles, let's say 65 to 75. The key thing with that group, it isn't actually that they have that many more miles. It's that they do tend to go at a faster pace, and often the extra miles are also going uphill. So that's definitely the most demanding group. And what I always say to people is if you're kind of between the middle and the more demanding, there is one segment of the ride that it's basically Thursday. Most years it ends up being the route for Thursday and then Friday. That the Friday route that group is on is totally unique and beautiful. If you're on the cusp between the two, I encourage people to train a little bit harder so that they can do that part on Friday. But I think as you're describing yourself, the issue is going to be more less about your strength and more about pacing yourself, because
Right.
you don't want to get to the rest stop and be done for the day. You want to get to the rest stop,
I
be able
see
to.
I see the picture behind Howie Rodenstein. That is this uphill road. And I'm wondering how hard this is going to be.
Parts of the route, and I'll let others comment on it. Well, parts of the route are challenging. Parts of the route are flats and rolling hills. I think the way I usually describe it to people is, except for one day, Thursday, at the end of each day, there will be at least one hill that you still remember. So it's a hill you'll work on. There's a couple of days where there might be two. Thursday, what's different about it? Thursday, you'll actually almost never feel like you're on a hill, but the reality is you're climbing ever so slightly the whole day on Thursday. So it's actually a harder
Jack,
day.
I think,
than it looks.
Jack, I think you're gonna have some training to do if you really want to enjoy it. And I think given that everybody here and most of the people have a little bit more experience than you, let's do an offline conversation and talk through it a little bit more as it relates to you. I'll be happy to get on the phone and talk to you.
That's fine. Thank you. Yeah.
See, Steve
We should
Golden
also
is,
note there's quite a number of riders and alumni riders from the DC area. So if you'd like to meet some other alumni in the area, we'd be happy to make the introductions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I met one Alan. Alan, forgot his last name, who did it a couple of years ago, and that's how I learned about the ride.
For your stupid comments.
It's great.
Thank you.
Steve Golden is very politely raising his hand.
Hi, Howie, question for you. We just booked our flights yesterday and got a great deal on Delta. We purposefully chose the latest flight because we heard that the Dubai trip is going to be quite fantastic. Do you have any details that you can give us about the post trip to Dubai?
Sure. There'll be an email coming out probably next week. But what we're tentatively planning, based upon interest and participation, Israel ride post trip to Dubai. It looks like it's going to be 3 days and 2 nights. So we would leave on Tuesday and fly and go from Eilat to Ben Gurion, then from Ben Gurion to Dubai, and then back from Dubai to Tel Aviv. It's very hard at this point to know exactly about costing, but it looks like it's going to cost something in the I believe it's $500 to $800 range for ground costs, and another $300 to $500 for the airfare back and forth. We need a certain minimum of people, probably 12 or 15 people to pull it off. And we're going to set up a situation where we're asking people to put down a deposit and register. And if the trip doesn't happen, you'll get your full money back. And if the trip happens and you decide not to go, you'll get still most of your deposit back. But we want to find out how many people are really interested so we can sort of try and plan it. There seems to be a sort of a standard set of things you would do in 2 days worth in Dubai, and we'll have more information upon that as time goes on.
Will the food be kosher?
The hotels do offer a special, you can order kosher food specially, so that will likely be an increase in cost. I don't know how much is vegetarian and how much is something else, but yes, there is knowledge of that, and there should be an option for that.
Great. Thank you.
I also want to address one of Neil's opening questions about fundraising efforts and whether or not that has been affected by whether or not current events have affected that. I cannot speak to specific fundraising efforts, but something that I can share is the events that we're seeing really highlights how important the work is that the Israel Ride supports. Obviously, the Arava Institute is doing absolutely crucial peace building work in Israel. And Hazon does really important work helping people be more independent with growing their own food and having access to healthy produce. Both of these things are really, really important for working towards a peaceful, healthy world for everyone. And that is definitely the message that I would be sharing. But again, I really encourage everyone to join our Facebook group where you can ask fellow riders questions or give advice or commiserate together, depending on what you want to talk about.
Yeah, and just to add to what Sarah's saying, if any of you, a couple of you expressed this question, are looking for more information on what either the Arava Institute or Hazon are doing now, as you're doing your fundraising outreach, feel free to reach out to us directly and we can give you some additional up-to-date. I mean, certainly in light of what's happening in Israel, we are very much in conversation. Our students, our alumni, our partners, and Hazon is busy here as far as climate change, the environmental movement, and what's going on. So they're not static, right? The talking points and what's happening. And I think Neil and some others have said, how are people framing that? We're happy to give you information and help you there.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, there's been so much news about intercommunal violence in Israel. Irving Kristol had this horrible piece in the Times the other day in which they proved that there are all these internet groups out to attack Arabs in Israel. There are also internet groups in Israel which are mounting, initiatives to support intercommunal understanding, which don't get any publicity, of course. But it would be great to get communication from the Arava Institute about the experience on the campus. I'm sure there have been some tense moments, but this is where the whole point of this, communal existence should really matter, and it would be helpful, not just for fundraising, but also for our spiritual and emotional well-being, to hear that it's working, that the campus is holding together, that the members of the groups are, living through the purpose of the interpersonal understandings that
it's a great point, Neil. We're actually, keep an eye out in your email. We are going to be offering some opportunities, some Zoom conversations to connect with our leadership in Israel over the next week or two, to get to hear some of those updates from them. So you'll have that, and we'll be posting on our website and sharing that information electronically as well.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm looking over.
So
Yep, Howie.
we've also heard concern from some people. What happens if I start my fundraising and then the trip doesn't go? We had a lot of people last year who had started their fundraising and they had the opportunity to just roll it over to the next year. So I don't think that's a reason not to get started. And lots of people have said, should I book my tickets now? Do I know if it's really going to happen? And I think there are some great deals out there now in terms of tickets, and they're pretty much, although the rules keep changing, they're pretty much all refundable or rolloverable if something happens. So I would say do it. Go forward, make your plans.
I'd agree, but that probably doesn't surprise anybody. But last year when when the world changed and things had to be canceled and rescheduled, we accommodated people, but maybe more important to some is the airlines, the hotels, et cetera. They all, whether they liked it or not, did ultimately accommodate people. And right now, as travel is starting to open up, as some borders are starting to open up, you are seeing a lot of pretty aggressive promotional prices from the airlines, especially internationally. Those could easily disappear in a few months. So, of course, I booked my tickets like 5 months ago, but that's just because it's what I do. I might mention one other thing, that there was the question about the post-ride trip that we're doing to Dubai. A few years ago, we did a trip pre-ride up north. That was it was a chance to see northern Israel, but oriented around the amazing food in Israel. It was a culinary trip organized with an agency named Via Sabra that we've worked with before. That actually one of their core competencies is these culinary trips. So we're planning a return to that this year as well. It'll be Sunday, Monday before the ride, and we'll be posting within the next couple weeks the same details on that as for the Dubai trip, except for the Via Sabra trip, we do have exact pricing. So we'll be able to post enough detail that when you register, what you're in for. But we got fantastic reviews and we did it a few years ago. I think it'll be the same this year.
And we have a question from Mark, who is raising his hand.
Yeah, sorry, because you may have addressed it before I came on, but do you actually foresee right now, I mean, from the standpoint of COVID and the vaccination progress, both in Israel and as well as, obviously in the US, I mean, assuming there's no outbreak or anything like that, do you actually foresee any reason why you would not be able to, say, have the ride you want to have?
No.
I mean, we think we're going to be able to do it. There might be some things that are not exactly the way they were.
Yeah.
And we may have to tweak some things in one direction or another, but no, we believe we'll be able to have a truly outstanding ride that we'll be proud of. And if we can't, we'll let you know, and we'll act accordingly, because
okay.
And Mark, I might just add, the current guidance from Israel is by July 1st, as long as you're fully vaccinated, have a negative COVID test before and immediately after your flight. And then they also are currently, the plan is on arrival in Israel, there's a rapid antibody test that people will be given. As long as you pass those criteria, you'll be welcomed into Israel with pretty much no restrictions. So I think that tells you where they think the public health situation will be. And that's going to be certainly an important source of insight to us.
So as long as the police don't say you have to keep 30 feet in between bicyclists, we'll probably be okay.
Yeah. And as you know, the police answer to their own authorities.
Right.
Could be 40 feet, could be 15 feet.
Right. Thanks.
Are you actually wearing a Be Cool hat cover while you were on a Swift ride?
Yeah, because I don't have they don't actually have a Swift cap, but I got the Be Cool hat for free, and it does keep the sweat off my head.
Okay. I didn't mean to diverge. I was just.
No, you noticed that.
So
that's pretty
important.
good. Yeah, no. You would think that they would actually make you would think that you could actually buy a Zwift hat, but I haven't seen one.
Okay, maybe we found a commercial opportunity.
There we go.
I see we have a raised hand from Carl. Carl, do you have a question for us?
Just a comment to or follow up on what Mark and Howie, David have all said. Right now, for an international flight out of the United States, you need to have a COVID test and have a negative COVID test or paperwork that shows that you were infected. Once you land in Israel, after having done that before you leave, when you arrive in Israel, you need to take another COVID test. And that also needs to be negative. Otherwise, they will politely either put you in quarantine or back on a plane and send you home. The Israeli health authorities basically did away with the mask rule about 5 weeks ago. There are still issues with crowd size, particularly in synagogues. But as time progresses, those, as David said, those regs keep changing. And 2 weeks ago, it was different. 2 weeks from now, it'll probably be different. And I think all of the ride staff and professionals would hope that come October, everything is normal and COVID is a thing of the past. But you have to wait and see. That's the only advice I can give you right now, or a comment.
Thank you, Carl. I know that we're losing a bunch of people, so I just want to remind everyone that if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to us. You can email us at info@israelride.org. I also just dropped in the chat, if you have not yet scheduled a one-on-one call with staff, I encourage you to do so. If you have any questions that also you would like to schedule a phone or a Zoom call, feel free also to utilize that link. And if you have any feedback, we always welcome that. If it's positive feedback, feel free to reach out to me. If it's negative, I invite you to reach out to Howie and David.
Seems reasonable.
I'm new. What do you want from me? If anyone has any other questions, I invite you to share. I know we had a couple real specific questions regarding trails and biking options. I think that we're gonna email people offline later about that because those are pretty specific. I'm pretty sure that I got to everyone else reviewing the questions. Again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to email, call my business.
Sarah, it
line,
looks like
etc.
there's one hand up. Is there?
I think that's still Carl's from earlier, unless Carl,
Okay.
you have something else that you wanted to share. Going once. Oh, it's down. There we go. Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was really lovely. Thank you to Howie and David for answering all the questions. I really hope that we did not scare the Cohens off. We will not turn you into leadership positions if you do not want that. We're a very, very kind and respectful group. If you are interested in another similar get together, we have one coming up on June 9th. I put that in the chat and you could feel free to view all of our events on the Israel Ride website. It was really, really lovely to see everybody. Do Howie or David, either of you have any closing thoughts? No pressure, but it should be really inspirational.
You know, I'm not so great on
We're
inspiration.
gonna do it. We're gonna
Yeah.
do it.
Woo!
That's inspiration enough.
I think the bottom line is we're going to do it. We look forward to seeing all of you in Jerusalem. And for anybody who's still wondering about training, just keep in mind that Howie and I are not starting to train until July. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it with you, and it's going to be a great ride.
We're really, really looking forward to it. I'm planning it, so it's going to be amazing. And again, thank you all so much for joining. I look forward to speaking to everyone soon. I wish everyone happy and safe riding and training and good weather.
Thank you all for all the work you put into this. It really is appreciated and it feels very real. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Give us feedback if you think this was helpful or what else we could do differently in general, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Okay.
Hey, Sarah, before you go, can I